Hi everybody, I'm back.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough
Well, as you can tell, I am Luna the Book Nerd, and I know I made a couple of videos and then kind of just disappeared, but I am back. Work things, life things, stuff happens. But today, I am bringing you my reading wrap-up for December. Because I'll be quite honest, I kind of just forgot to do it. I forgot to do it for YouTube. I forgot to do it for Instagram. So, I'm going to do my wrap-up now. Try to be kind of short, sweet, to the point. I'm going to go in chronological order of when I finished reading books. So, just to get into it, we are going to start with You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. I rated it 4.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was not perfect for me. So, for those of you who maybe haven't heard of it, which I'm sure if you're watching my content, you probably have, but You Weren't Meant to Be Human is about Crane, who is a trans man who ran away from home when they realized, essentially, like when their egg cracked, because they just couldn't stand to face their parents. And they wound up essentially joining a bug cult. And this isn't a cult that just worships bugs. No, the leaders are bugs. This is a body horror book that involves a lot of bugs. And also Crane is autistic. They're on the spectrum and they're mute. Not like physically so, but they just, ever since their transition in joining whatever the heck this cult is, they just don't want to talk. And you know what? Bet good on them. But see, the thing is, Crane got involved with another member of the cult named Levi, who is a veteran with a violent streak. And Crane really likes when they get rough intimately. But unfortunately for Crane, they weren't using protection, and apparently being on testosterone is not 100% birth control, and Crane winds up pregnant. And almost anyone else in this little society who winds up pregnant either has to die or get rid of it, because up until now, the bugs haven't wanted anyone to give birth, but now they want Crane to keep this baby. And everything in this book kind of spawns from Crane desperately not wanting this pregnancy because of the dysphoria that it brings, the trauma it brings. Crane never wanted kids. Even before he came out as trans, he knew he didn't want kids. Crane has got some issues. A lot of issues, honestly. But this is just making all of them so much worse. And I will say the ending of this book is one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever read, especially because, trigger warning, it does involve a baby. I mean, this whole book is kind of a giant trigger warning for pregnancy and ultimately a baby, but also a lot of violence and gore and just creepy, crawly, nasty stuff. So, You Weren't Meant to Be Human. I recommend it. So, go read it, especially if you like gross things and, LGBTQ type horror. My second read of December was Hysterical by Amber Dean, and that one was actually an arc. Amber Dean was on Instagram. I started following her. She followed me back. She was still looking for some advanced readers to just kind of do, I guess, a final reread. I got a copy of the book for free. Just putting that out there. I did get a digital copy for free. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's about Jessie, who also is called Razor. And Jessie lives in New York in 2013. Which, if you were a Tumblr girl like I was, you know the type of aesthetics that are probably going to be coming with this book, because it's a very specific Tumblr aesthetic. But I enjoy it. But yeah, Jessie's living in New York. It begins with her leaving the apartment of some loser boyfriend she had. I think he was a DJ. And she just got tired of it, and she found a wealthy Wall Street guy renting an apartment really cheap, and she gets involved with that, gets her own place. But see, the thing is, Jessie is in love with her best friend Tinsel. But it's obvious Tinsel is not in love with her. In fact, it's pretty obvious that Tinsel kind of just uses Jessie for attention. And it almost, like, the vibe of the book kind of makes you feel like Jessie's the friend she hangs out with when she doesn't have any other friends to hang out with. Like, all the other people she would prefer to hang out with are busy. And yeah, so picture if Patrick Bateman was born like 20 years later and was let loose in 2013 New York and was also hopelessly obsessed with their best friend. And that's this book. Because it is depraved, there's murder. I wouldn't say it's extreme as American Psycho is, but you can definitely feel that was part of the inspiration in the writing of this book. And I mean, I liked it. Like I said, it wasn't a perfect 5-star for me, but I had fun reading it. It was a little slow for me in the beginning, but it did pick up, and I really enjoyed seeing how unhinged a female character could get. Because, like I said, we have American Psycho. We have so many books about these unhinged men committing acts of violence due to their own frustrations and sexual desires. We need more women like that. Because, yes, we get unhinged women. But there's always a slight difference, and this book kind of closes that gap. If I didn't say so before, I rated it 4 stars. I think I had fun with it. It's starting to really pick up. It's Amber Dean's first book. It's her debut. So yeah, give it a shot. It came out last month. Thumbs up from me. All right. So my next 2 I actually finished on the same day, so I don't even remember which I finished first, but I'm just going in the order of my little list. The 3rd book I finished was Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. Mr. Magic is about a TV show. In fact, if you've been on the internet long enough, I'm sure you've heard the creepypasta about, like, Candle Cove, the TV show that everyone seems to remember but was never actually real, and there's no footage of it. It's a creepypasta. It was never real. But, like, the point of the story is everyone remembers it, but then it's like it wasn't real. That's kind of what seems to have inspired Mr. Magic. It starts with the girl Val, whose sister disappeared when she and her sister were on the TV show Mr. Magic as children. And her father took her and, like, ran off. And they've been, like, on the lam, hiding, like, on this ranch under, like, assumed identities, essentially kind of off the grid for, like, over 20 years. Like, I'm pretty sure Val is in her late 30s, as are the rest of the cast members. But when Val's father dies, somehow her old castmates, Isaac, Marcus, and Javi, and then Jenny, but she comes in a little later because she's already at the place they're going to, they happen to hear about Val's father passing. They show up and essentially kind of, like, it's not that they push Val into going to this reunion for the show, but she feels like she has to because she's, like, been burning with guilt for, like, 25 years over her sister's disappearance. Her sister's name was Kitty. It just, like, they were just filming the show one day, and, like, Kitty just disappeared, and Val doesn't really remember what happened. Like, she essentially has almost, like, no memory of her life before she turned, like, 9. All she's really known is her life on the ranch with her dad and the people that were letting them stay there. And it winds up turning into this thing where essentially the show is connected to a cult. The author of this is, I believe, an ex-Mormon, so a lot of those influences come into the Mr. Magic show, because kind of like what the cult wants the show to do is to teach children traditional, like, Christian conservative values. Jenny, the character, is a good example of what they want the characters or the children to grow up to be, like these attention-seeking, approval-seeking perfectionists who just do what they're told. And I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to give any spoilers if you are interested in reading it. I did wind up only rating it a 3.5 because I felt like it could have gave more. I wanted really more about the show and what really was going on with those kids instead of just, like, little flashbacks. But that's just me. And then the one I finished on that same day, Dear Laura by Gemma Moore. I hope I'm saying her name right. I rated it 4 stars. And it's a shorter book. I'm pretty sure it's like a novella. But essentially, it's about a girl named Laura who, when she was around 13, 14, her and her best friend Bobby had just started dating, had just shared their first kiss. And when Laura has to return to her house to get something she forgot while her and Bobby were headed to their bus stop to go to school, and keep in mind this takes place in England because I can't say anything, but it's like relevant to how it ends. But she's like, she went back home and comes back and she sees Bobby talking to a man in a car. But she doesn't get a good look at the man, and Bobby gets in the car and goes missing. Bobby just completely disappears. And everyone is devastated. Bobby's mom blames Laura, which, isn't fair. She was a kid. What was she supposed to do, And, she's devastated. And then she starts getting these letters. Dear Laura. And you quickly discover that these letters are from a PDF file. And it's, he insinuates that he is the one who took Bobby. And he's like, if you ever want to find Bobby, you got to do stuff for me. Like leaving her sanitary pads in a bag in the yard for him to pick up and do God knows what with, to cut off hair and leave it for him. And she gets these letters every year on her birthday. And this man is, following her. He's stalking her and like leaving her these breadcrumbs and coordinates and locations to go to. And eventually she cracks, especially when he like attacks her when she's gonna eventually try to go to the police. He attacks her, steals the evidence. She just can't deal with it anymore. And eventually it stops. She meets a man, gets married, has a kid. She's living her life. She still never forgets Bobby. But she's like, finally, it's over. Maybe he died. Maybe he went to prison. I don't know. But he's leaving me alone finally. And she decides, like, there's no point in telling Bobby's parents. There's no point telling anyone because she doesn't have any evidence. She doesn't have the letters anymore because the guy broke into her house and stole them. And then when she's in her 40s, keep in mind, this originated when she was 14. And in her 40s, she finally starts getting letters again. Turns out old dude really went to prison for something. Because, slight spoiler, Bobby was not his first. And it culminates with Laura deciding to finally confront the problem face to face. Because ultimately, she wants to know what happened to her friend. She wants to know what befell him. Ultimately, we can kind of figure out what happened, but she wants to know, the details, which I don't blame her for. I did wind up rating this one 4 stars. It was quick. I listened to it on audio. Yeah, pretty good, gory. It's definitely kind of leans a little bit more into the extreme horror sphere, but not too much. And then I read this book called Bloodstain. It was actually a nonfiction book by Peter Lalore, and it was about the Catherine Knight case from Australia, if you've ever heard of that. Essentially, Catherine Knight was a woman who was known to be violent and, towards her partners throughout her life. She had an obsession with knives, and she ultimately wound up killing her last partner, skinning him, and cooking him into food she intended to serve to his children, his adult children. But the thing is, I already knew about this case. Long before I got into horror fiction and doing this, I've always been a true crime fan. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that previously. But this book, I rated it 2 stars, man. I gave the extra star because it is hard to write a book, and it wasn't so terrible it was unreadable. But it's the author had this bad habit of naming every single character or person involved with this story. But then he would call them by their last name, then he'd call them by their first name, and then he'd call them by a nickname. And there's so many people involved, so many interviews, just so much going on, and it is so hard to keep track. And then even though this book was published in 2002, the fact that this is obviously an international seller, it should have had a way better editor on it, because I had so many freaking typos and just grammatical errors and things that ticked me off while reading this. I finished it because I was doing the Storygraph Read the Worlds challenge and I needed an Australian book, and I bought it, so I committed to it. But yeah, this definitely needs a revamp, and he needs to be way more consistent with how he refers to people, especially when, like, the victim, John Price, had a son named Jonathan, but who he would also refer to as John. You can see where that would get confusing, and that's just with 2 characters. A lot of the characters shared names. I'm pretty sure there was even more than one Catherine in this story, in what happened. So yeah, 2 stars. Sorry, Peter, but I hope you improved since 2002. And then after that, I read Tell Me I'm Worthless by Allison Runfit, which I also rated 4 stars. And I will say this is a brutal read. Heavy trigger warnings for a lot of really bad stuff. So essentially, Tell Me I'm Worthless is about Alice, who is a trans woman, and Isla, who is a Palestinian Jew, who they had like a situationship sometime back when they were still hanging out with a girl named Hannah, but they all decided to go to this infamous house that is like known for like people dying there, just terrible stuff happening. It's been sitting empty. It's just it's got like a bad vibe to it. Just this house is just yucky. Like, just even reading about it kind of makes your skin crawl, and when you read it, you'll understand why. But they go to this house and things happen. Hannah never returns. Alice accuses Isla of SA. Isla accuses Alice of SA. Alice has and still is involved with extreme right-wing fetishization stuff. If you know, you know. Think about what's going on in the US and the type of people that is. That's the type of circles Alice kind of was in before she came out as trans, and even then she's like making like sex work content involving stuff like that. And Isla went really extreme into the turf sphere. So, yeah, I'll be honest, they're both not great people. And I like that this author, who is part of the LGBTQ community themselves, made these characters who are queer, but they're not innocent necessarily. Like, they're not 100% innocent. Like, they don't deserve the things that happen to them, especially in regards to the house. But, it shows that people can be multifaceted, and even when you yourself are part of a marginalized community, you can have prejudices and bigotry towards other parts of your own community and other marginalized people. And the book is ultimately exploring the nature of queerness and then like right-wing fundamentalism in England, but a lot of those messages really translate well to American politics as well. It's a really tough read. It can be really hard to get through. It is very traumatizing, and, just trigger warnings for, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, violence, just all kinds of stuff, drug use, just all kinds of stuff. But I do feel like it's an important work, and I feel like a lot of people need to read it to also show that there can be some level of redemption, even if you yourself have had a shitty past. It's just you have to essentially acknowledge that what you did was shitty and take accountability, because that's the only way you can really change, is if you accept what you did and decide, I don't want to be like this anymore, and actively change it. But yes, 4 stars. Tough read, but I'm glad I read it, and I feel like I might reread it at some point in the future. Alright, the next one is another kind of more novella, Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. I actually rated this one 4.5. And going into this, I did not know it was cosmic horror, which was actually kind of refreshing, especially because this book in general was really refreshing. I probably have mentioned it before, but I am child-free by choice. I personally just don't want to be a parent. A lot of issues and reasons behind that. It is what it is. This book not only is about a child-free protagonist, but he's male. His name's Phil. And Phil is living a pretty good life. He's divorced because his first wife realized she wanted kids and he decided he didn't, so, break there. He's got a girlfriend that he loves a lot who's, on the same page as him. And he just goes to Walmart to get some candy for their movie day. And while he's there, there's this woman there who just looks honestly kind of half dead with this bratty ass boy, like, who's just like wanting nothing but sour candy, and he's, screaming and acting the fool, and Phil's like, fuck this, I'm getting my candy and leaving. But then the woman he saw in Walmart hits him, like hits his car, causes a car accident before herself, and then suddenly he gets home and the boy's there, and everything about his life, the pictures in his house, his relationships, his social media, all of it is as if he's always had this boy that apparently him and his ex-wife adopted, and the only reason he's single now is because his ex-wife was in a car accident that left her paralyzed. And you start to discover throughout time that this kid ain't right. And yeah, he's a manifestation of the cosmic horror I mentioned. I'm not going to go any further because it's a short read. You want to know what happens, read it. I think it's really good. Next one I read was We Could Be Rats by Emily Austin. I also rated this one 4 stars. So this book is essentially, it's about, in a way, kind of like mental health and growing up in a small, like, conservative town, like, with, like, a lot of religion kind of shoved down your throat growing up. But essentially it starts off with 21 drafts of a suicide note by Sigrid, who she just keeps making up different reasons why she wanted to die. And it's talking about, like, her friend Greta and how their lives fell apart because Greta got into drugs. It talks about Sigrid being queer and not knowing how to tell everyone in her life that she's queer. And that, especially in a town where a man who is known to have been a creep in high school and is running on a very conservative platform is looking like he's going to win the mayor, even though he's a bully and just, quite frankly, a terrible person. And essentially this book kind of just follows Sigrid and her sister Margit, because, spoiler, Margit kind of takes over the second half with her writing and her dealing with, like, a sister who tried to take their own life, and just dealing with the ramifications of where they grew up and the pain and the harm that can come from growing up in a place like that, that's so stifling. And, you try so hard to be perfect, but no matter what you do, you're not. And, it's not even really horror. It's more just, like, kind of like contemporary kind of sad girl fiction, but I really liked it. And it made me think about a lot of things, and I definitely related to Sigrid. Not in every way, but in a lot of ways. Because I myself grew up in small, conservative, rural places that were very hostile to people who did not fit the mold. Next one I read was a translated work, actually. Blood Cruise by Matt Stromberg. I also rated this one 4 stars. And this book is essentially what happens when you put vampires on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Like, think a booze cruise liner. And I'm not going to get into all the characters because this had a lot of characters. It definitely kind of smacks of Let the Right One In. Although I will say it's not quite to that caliber. If I had to pick between the two, I would pick Let the Right One In. But essentially it's this cruise that starts in Sweden, and then it's like going to Finland and back. It's like, one night cruise for people to just party, drink, whatever. And a mother and her son who happen to be vampires come aboard, and let's just say shenanigans ensue. Yeah, this book's really bloody and kind of bleak, but I did like the characters. I liked a lot of the characterizations. Like, I sometimes get hesitant when there's a lot of, like, different names to try to keep track of, but it's multiple point of views. Each character's voice really shines through, so well, it also, like, says who the chapter's about, but, like, who the people are, you can feel their character and, like, their motivations, and I liked it. I think it was pretty good. Pretty fucked up. But, you know, I like that. Let's see. After Blood Cruise, I read What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. I also rated that 4 stars. And this is actually the sequel to What Moves the Dead. It's part of the Sworn Soldier series, which is about Alex Easton and their like manservant friend Angus. And then Miss Potter from the first book returns. The mycologist returns. And this book is actually not set in the same place. It's actually set in Galatia, the fictional country that Alex is from. That, like, because Alex is not a binary character. There's like a third gender in this country for people who essentially want to become soldiers. They don't care what parts you were born with. Once you become a sworn soldier, that's your gender identity, essentially. But this book, in like the first book, was kind of like harking back to the fall of the House of Usher. This was more based on, I think, more vague folklore about like succubi, about like women who come and steal your life in the middle of the night. But it wasn't as like sex focused as traditional succubus stories are. But essentially, Alex and Angus are going back to Alex's family's old hunting cabin. Turns out their caretaker, who was supposed to like keep it up, died of like tuberculosis or pneumonia. And yeah, just the thing feels haunted. Other helpers that Alex hires start getting sick, and then Alex themselves starts getting sick. And it ultimately comes down to figuring out what's causing the sickness, like what supernatural entity is causing like the tuberculosis and the pneumonia. And yeah, I liked it. I'm looking forward to reading the 3rd book. I think it is already out and it is on my TBR, although maybe not my immediate one, but I am looking forward to it. I enjoy T. Kingfisher's work. And then this next book is called A Christmas Choral by Michael D.A. Clarke. And I actually got this one for free. Michael reached out to me on Instagram and asked if I would like essentially his collection of work for free. And I accepted. And Michael actually normally seems to write horror. I just picked the one book that was more of a comedy focused book. Like, I was so confused when I first started because like I was reading the synopsis of his other books. And I was like, well, let me read this one that seems really Christmassy, because I think I'd like finish this like a day or two before Christmas. And, you know, so I was like wondering when the horror was going to come in, and then I realized, oh, this is more comedy, which it was cute. So essentially this book is about Aiden, who is dating the daughter of essentially the neighborhood witch, Coral. And I say witch as a stand-in for the word that starts with B, because I'm trying to cut down on my cussing in these videos. But Coral is like that nosy, pretentious neighbor who, like, if your grass is 1 inch higher than the HOA allows, she's reporting you. She makes kids cry. She doesn't like Aiden dating her daughter because his family isn't rich. And she's all about keeping up appearances and just having control and power over everyone around her. And yeah, this story is essentially about Aiden and his friends trying to get revenge on Coral after she kind of convinces like her daughter to break up with Aiden because he's not good enough. And it turns into them essentially trying to set up like a Christmas Carol scenario of like different ghosts visiting the house and like making Coral change her ways. And yeah, it was funny. I liked the ending because I feel like it ended the way it should have. But yeah, just a cute little Christmas read. And thank you again, Michael, for sending me, you know, free copies of your books. I will eventually get through the rest of them. I've just got like a really long list of books I want to read this year. And then my second to last read of December is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I wound up rating this one 4.5 stars. Again, not quite perfect, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. So this book is about Jeff, Amy, Stacy, and Eric. A bunch of like late, kind of like older college students vacationing in Mexico. You know, they're just screwing around, drinking, having fun, until one day they go scuba diving and they lose something or something happens where this German tourist named Matthias helps them, and in return he starts asking if maybe they could help him find his brother. Because, see, he went to Mexico with his brother, but his brother met an archaeologist and went off with her to this ruined dig site, and he hasn't heard from him. Hide nor hair. And he's starting to get worried because their flight's coming up to go back home, and, you know, he wants to make sure his brother's going to be on that flight. It's like, you know, had your fun in Mexico, but we need to go home, dude. And honestly, nobody, like, so Jeff is dating Amy and Stacy's dating Eric, and the only person who really wants to go help Matthias is Jeff, but like, because he's kind of the leader of the group, he's like the one studying to be a doctor, he's the one with the best, you know, like head on his shoulders, he's kind of like the de facto leader, and everyone kind of disagrees. And there's also this Greek guy, because there's like these Greek people they've been hanging out with who don't speak English or Spanish, so they've just been like, this Greek guy who goes by Pablo. It's not his real name, but it's what he's called through most of the book. He decides to go with them just because, you know, his friends are off doing something else, and he just tags along. But, yeah, they wind up, like, taking this bus, and they reach this Mayan village, and, like, no one there greets them. No one is there, like, everyone watches them, but no one interacts, and you can tell, like, something's up. And so they start to head back, and as they're walking back through the jungle, trying to figure out how they're going to get a cab to get back to the closest town, they see what looks like an entryway into the more dense jungle that's been, like, hidden. And instead of using their brains and realizing, these people aren't friendly, and this is obviously hidden, they must not want us going here for some reason, they decide to go. And they find the ruins, and like the Mayan village is trying so hard to stop them. They're like, please, like, you know, and of course there's a language barrier, because even though like some of the characters speak some Spanish, you know, the Mayan people, they speak their native language, so it's not like it's hard to communicate. And Amy steps on a vine. And when she steps on a vine, suddenly the tune changes, and now they're forced up onto this ruin that's like essentially just a heap covered in vines, with these weird little mounds all over the place. And it used to be like a mine. I think it was like a Mayan temple that was also like eventually like turned into an old mine shaft. And yeah, they're not allowed to come down from the hill, from the ruin, because if they try, will get shot with arrows and die, because that's, spoiler alert, what happened to Matthias's brother and everyone that he was with. That, or, you know, what else happens in the book. And yeah, things just get really bad really quickly. Pablo falls down the mine shaft. You know, they're starting to worry about water. They're starting to worry about food. Because, like, no one was smart enough to even think, like, I know this is supposed to be a day trip, but maybe we should bring enough supplies just in case, since we're going into the jungle, just in case. But no, that's what kept this from being a perfect 5, because I don't like when everyone in horror books is stupid, and that being kind of what gets everything turning, because there's just so many little things that could have been done, and none of what happened in the book would have happened. Like, even if like the Mayan village had one person there who spoke Spanish to warn everyone away and tell them it's not safe, and if you go there you will never come back, that'd be one thing. Or, you know, like the people bringing more food, or just like Amy listening when everyone was telling her to stop moving before she touched the vine. Just a lot of things, but it's gory, it's fucked up, and yeah, you should read it. And I hear there's a movie, but I haven't seen it, so. And, the one I've been waiting for, the only one I have a physical copy of, The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi. I hope I said that right. I'm sorry, Philip, if I didn't. But, so if you watched my top 25 of 2025, you would have seen that I said What Hunger was my favorite book of last year. I jumped the gun making that video, because, this one right here, this is my favorite. I literally finished reading it on the 31st, and it is my favorite read of 2025, and I'm very glad to have read it. But essentially, I rated it 5 stars. It was the only 5-star of December. And it essentially follows Rose DuBois as she's living in the Autumn Springs retirement home. And she's just living her life. She enjoys, she's got little complaints about like the train that wakes her up sometimes. But overall, it's a nice place to live. She has friends, especially her friend Miller, who maybe wants to be something more than friends. But he's a good guy. He's patient. He doesn't push. Especially because of the reasons Rose doesn't want to be in a relationship, which you find out in the book. You find out what her previous marriage was like, and you start to understand why she's not so keen on romance. But this book kind of, like, it starts heavy and just keeps going, because it literally, like, less than, I think, 30 pages in, you get a murder. And this book, it is a slasher, straight up slasher, and it is good. I adored this. I ate this up. It's like, mwah, just perfection. Like, Rose is so strong-willed, but they're also all realistic. Like, you could see some stuff like this happening somewhere. Like, it gets a little zany, a little, like, kind of pushing on the edges of what's believable, but there's no, like, supernatural stuff. It's all just a lot of planning and access, honestly, to drugs. But yeah, Rose's friend group is getting picked off one by one. In the beginning, the cops aren't even thinking that these are murders, even though they're obviously violent deaths in most cases. And yeah, I can't go into a lot of detail because I feel like I would give something away, and like part of the fun is figuring out the mystery. Like, I actually guessed who the killer was about halfway through, but that was when I still had like a couple other people on the burner. But as things kept going, like, I knew who the killer was, but I was still happy with the reveal, because exactly how unhinged the killer is, that was surprising. And even though, like, you see the first murder, regardless, this is a great book. You should read it. And it just makes me feel so good, like, because as I'm getting older, I don't want to read about teenagers all the time. I don't want to read about necessarily people in their early 20s. And it's a really big breath of fresh air to see books focusing on protagonists who are in, like, their golden years and are older, to show and help, I guess, illustrate that just because you get old doesn't mean your life stops. Yeah, just, you really should, like, if you have not read this yet, read it. It is so good. It's fun. It made me laugh. I got emotional at some points. Like, it just, the characters are so good. The mystery is so good. I don't even want to, like, give details, because, and then, like, two of the deaths in this actually, like, made me tear up a little bit because of just how great of characters those people were. And it makes me sad that they went the way they did. They didn't deserve that. No one in here deserved what happened to them, other than, the killer, obviously. But yes, read it. It's great. It's like, bro, it even has witches. Like, they're not, it's, maybe there's a little paranormal stuff going on in here, but there's witches. They're not, like, major players. But the fact that, like, it's a retirement home with witch sisters makes me happy, because I want to be a witch sister one day. I don't have any real sisters, but, like, found family, y'all. Anyway, that about wraps up what I wanted to accomplish here. Just go over my December wrap up. I do plan on doing my January one eventually. I'll be real with y'all. I'm chronically ill, and I just started working, like, my job again in a different role. Even that, it's like, it took a lot out of me. That's why I haven't been, like, keeping up with this the way I wanted to. But I hope that you enjoyed this, and that maybe I inspired you to read some of the books I liked, and who knows, maybe you'll enjoy the ones that I didn't enjoy as much as others. So yeah, I'm Luna the Book Nerd, and I will see you next time.